So should you train by pace and effort, or should you let the data decide and train by heart rate or other? Today we're going to be diving in and talking all about it. So welcome back to another video. My name's Andy, the Forest Dean Runner, and today we're sitting down and talking all about how to train in terms of should you use pace and effort, should you be using heart rate, and we'll also talk and touch briefly on power and of course lactate. We're going to talk about all that today in terms of what's involved, what progress you can expect, and how to measure progress with all of those ways, and then how I train, show you some stats and how it's working for me, and then at the end talk about what's right. So without further ado, we're going to dive in straight into this. So if you're excited for today's video, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, and of course subscribe to the channel for weekly running content. Let's talk about what's involved with these options. So we're going to predominantly focus on pace and effort and then heart rate, because those are the two methods that I've used throughout my training, and we're going to touch on the other 2 points later. So what's involved? How do you measure the progress, and how do you go about starting training by these methods? Well, for me, I am the person that works by pace and effort, so I'll set myself a pace at the start of a training plan that I want to run certain runs at, and we'll focus quite intently today on easy runs and moderate runs. Workouts we're going to talk about, because that's when I flip over to working by effort. And in terms of heart rate, you're working and labeling out, if I want to run easy, I want to run it at this heart rate or below. If I want to run moderate, I want to run in and around this heart rate, and so on and so forth. So in terms of measuring progress with both of those from starting on week 1 to the end of a training block, at the moment we'll use the example that I'm in, because I'm going to throw you some stats shortly, but I'm doing a 10-week training block, and I set myself out an easy run pace and I set myself a moderate run pace. And for me, to measure progress, when I start in week 1, I know the data, heart rate in particular, is going to be higher. I'm going to be working harder. And as I get fitter, that pace to effort level is going to become a lot easier. So my heart rate is going to become lower, and the effort effectively that I put in and I feel that I'm putting in to hold that pace is going to be a lot less. It's going to feel easier. And then gradually towards the end of the training block, I'm actually going to feel a little bit fresher. It's what I usually do, and it feels really good, especially when you get to that back end of a training block, when you're really grinding through the fatigue. You know that actually your easy runs and moderate runs that you've got to supplement all the other training are not going to feel too bad, because the effort level you're putting in is less than it was at the start. If you're working by heart rate, then you tend to go, right, I'm going to run my easy runs at, let's just pick a number, 130 beats a minute and below, and my moderate runs at 145, or steady I should say, 145 beats a minute. Let's just pick those two numbers because they're relatively close to what I use. And you basically follow that throughout. And in terms of measuring progress, what you'll see is if you go out in week 1 and run a moderate run at 145 beats a minute, what you'll notice is over the course of the training block, the pace for that heart rate will come down, so it will get quicker. So what you'll do is you'll permanently be training at that effort level. You'll permanently be training around 145 beats a minute, because you'll be watching meticulously at your watch to make sure you're at the right heart rate area and zone, but the pace will come down. So that's how you measure progress that way. You might start at a certain pace and you'll finish a training block a lot lower. And again, in terms of what I just said with training by pace itself, you finish the training block feeling a little bit easier when you're doing those moderate runs and easy runs. With heart rate, you're kind of continuing that same effort all the way through. So when that fatigue really does set in towards the end of a block, you start to feel it a little bit more, which is why I prefer to do it the other way round. So how do I work? Well, I like to do pace and effort over heart rate. I like to look at heart rate after, and I like to use heart rate as a good reference point to mark progress, but I never like to look at it during a run. If I do, I'm just glancing at it to see what the effort is, but I don't ever let it dictate what I'm doing. I like to purely go by how I'm feeling that day, or run by pace. In terms of workouts, I go completely by feel. I don't run to any paces whatsoever. I'll push to what I feel the right effort level is, and that's how I like to do workouts. But then when it comes to easy and moderate runs, I'm a little bit more disciplined with running to pace more so than effort. I kind of mix the two up there and go, right, well, I know I want to run in and around this pace, so let's do it and let's see how it feels. So in the start of a training block, I basically earmark the paces that I wanted to. And how do I do that? Well, the answer to that is I've run so many training blocks now that I've gently over time watched my paces come down. So I'm now at a point where I can look and go, right, well, I'm going to notch another 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds off each of my easy run pace and my steady or moderate run pace. Just notch it up a little bit, go one more rung up the ladder, and see how that feels. Start at the top of the training block, And week 1, you'll know that your heart rate's going to be a bit higher, but by the end of it, it will come down. And the reason this time I've chosen 7:30s for my easy run pace and 6:35s for my moderates is because throughout my recent training blocks, I've noticed that when I get to my fittest, I can hit those paces roughly for that good heart rate area that I want to be in, which for me, as I said, is easy run, late 120s, early 130s, and moderate efforts is anywhere sort of low to mid 140s. I'm coming home after a run checking and going, that's falling right in the right area. That's both of those runs are under my aerobic threshold. That's exactly where I want to keep these zone 1 and zone 2 efforts. Brilliant. And over time, I've kind of got the gist of the fact that when I get fit, I know I can hit those paces for the right effort levels. And so this time I went, right, well, you were hitting at the end of the last marathon training block, late 620s for this effort level that you want to. So let's go at the start of this block 6:35 and let's see where we get to. Give or take a few seconds either side, but this is where we're going to go to. And that's kind of how I set my paces. I kind of each training block, I just notch everything a tiny little bit. And that's based on the fact that if I've completed the training block or not. If I haven't, I'll go back to the beginning on the next block and start where I was before, because obviously injury, a few weeks off, it can knock your fitness back a little bit. But if you're able to flow from one block to the other, then I don't see any reason why you can't just gently notch those paces up every single time. So time to throw out some stats. I'm going to refer to my sheet here, but I want to show you some good examples of how this is working for me, for my moderate and easy runs. And we'll start with the moderate runs, shall we? So week 1, I've got 4 examples for you. Week 1, 3, 5, and 7. 7 is the week we're in right now. Week 1, 6:33 per mile, 150 beats a minute. This had strides on the end, so if you take the strides off, checking in my Garmin Connect, if I went into laps and I checked my 50-minute chunk of run before the strides, it was 148. So for the 50-minute portion of moderate running, 148 beats a minute. And then week 3, 6:31 per mile, 148. Again, remove the strides, checking in Garmin, it was 146. So you can see over a couple of weeks, we're just gently bringing it down. And then week 5, a bit of an anomaly. I was very fatigued there. Although the heart rate was good, 142, pace wasn't. I just couldn't get going that day. It happens, and it's good for me to show you that because this happens during a training block. The fatigue can build up. And then this week, 6:32 per mile. So again, week 1, 3, and 7, all within sort of 2 seconds per mile of each other. No strides on this one. I did the strides after the run, so I stopped it after 50 minutes, which is why I wanted to share on the first 1 and 3 run what the heart rate was with just the 50-minute chunk. 144 for this one. So you can see it's come down from 148, 146 and 144 as we're getting fitter. And in terms of the easy runs, we'll show you week 1, week 3 and week 6. I think week 5 didn't have one in there to show you because I think that was race week or something was going on that week, so I didn't get my normal run in. I'm trying to show you runs that I've run the exact route on so you can measure some good progress, and the only variability then that's going to play a massive impact in this sort of stuff is like weather, really. If it's really, really hot, which some of the time it has been during this training block. So week 1, 7:49 per mile and 131 beats a minute. Week 3, 7:49, exactly the same pace, but higher heart rate, a lot hotter that day, 137 beats a minute. And then week 6, which is last week, 7:30 per mile, so you can see nearly 20 seconds quicker per mile, 132 beats a minute. So very similar, 1 beat a minute higher than week 1, but 20 seconds per mile slower. So you can see hopefully those stats show you a good indication as to how I work to pace rather than heart rate. I'll set my stall out early. These are the paces I want to run. In the beginning, my heart rate is going to be a bit higher, or my pace is going to be a bit slower from my easy run and moderate run. But as I go through, that effort level I put in is going to be better. My pace can increase on my easy run. As I said at the start, 7:30 per mile is where I wanted to get to. I'm there in terms of week 6 of my training block. And with the moderate run, I've stuck at the 6:35 area, and you can see my heart rate's coming down. So that's how I like to do it. And as I said, as I get towards this end of the training block, I come off the back of these runs feeling better than what I did in the beginning, because I'm putting in less effort effectively. Like I'm running more efficiently, I'm getting fitter. And if I was running by heart rate and I was going for all of these, right, I want to run 145, what you probably would have seen instead is you'd have seen me start at around 6:45 per mile for moderate, and I might be down to like 6:30 per mile now, but the effort level's the same. So again, you'd have watched the pace increase, which is absolutely fine, but I'd have been putting in the same effort level. And when I get towards the end of a training block, I find it more useful to have more in the tank to nail the sessions, and then not relax more on my easier moderates, but be putting in a little bit less effort so that I can nail the quality rather than focusing on trying to hold a certain effort all the way through for every single run. So that begs the question then, what's right? What's the right way to train and what's the wrong way? Well, the answer is there isn't a right and a wrong way, if I'm completely honest with you. I know plenty of people that train both ways, and I know plenty of people that train by power. And again, power is going to be exactly the same effectively as training by heart rate. You're using a metric to dictate how you run. So if you're running at 145 beats a minute, then you just run in and around that. You might set your watch up to beep if you go over it or you're too far under it, so you can stay in that close range. Similarly with power, you'll set a power metric and you'll run to that. So those two are just basically running to a data source and allowing that to dictate how you train. I think lactate for me is the one other option that I would consider training by. I don't have a lactate monitor, but I feel it's probably the most natural way to, like, it's the closest that you're going to accuracy you're going to get your body to tell you how you're feeling effectively, because you're literally testing your blood and it's telling you how much lactate is building up. There's obviously very small percentage chances that your stride power pod or your heart rate monitor could be slightly out. For me, I know I wear an optical arm strap, which optical heart rate monitors, they're really, really good, but they're not quite as good as chest straps. But what I've always said and kind of preach in lots of videos, I suppose, is if you're going to use something to measure your data, stick with it throughout the training block, so that if it's slightly out, then it's slightly out through the training block. You're not going to get different options, like you're not going to get watch one day, chest strap another, optical arm strap another day. So stick with what you're doing. So for me, lactate will be a great way to train if I had a monitor, but I'm not really doing training to utilize that at the moment. I'm not really doing, that's sort of more for double threshold training where you're trying to control things. If I went back to that sort of training, I would definitely now consider investing in one. But for me, the other data sources, they're not really my cup of tea. I like to work by effort and pace and watch paces come down. And also, as I said, let things get a little bit easier towards the end of a block. It's how I prefer to do things. I like to feel fresher towards the end because I'm going to be sharpening up for my tune-up races. I want to have a little bit more oomph in the tank for those sessions. But there genuinely is no right or wrong way. It's all to preference, and I guarantee you, so many of you out there will be listening to this now going, well, I train to heart rate and I absolutely love it, which is fine, it's great. As long as we sort of stick to whatever it is throughout the training block, then we're going to get good results. So there we go, let's wrap it there, because I could talk about this for absolutely hours. But I think it would be sensible now to wrap it there, because I think there's so many of you out there that could be watching this going, well, I train by this, this and this. And actually that's what I want to hear. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below how you train. What's your preferred data metric? What do you measure? Or do you just like to go by pace and effort like myself? I'd love to hear really what the most common answer is, because I see it so much posted in and around social with heart rate and pushing the pace as well. You really are going to build up a lot of fatigue there. So I think if you're going to work with pace and effort, then stick with it throughout the block. If you're going to work with heart rate, stick with it throughout the block and then tinker with it afterwards. Don't mix and match in between. Anyway, that's it from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving it a like, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content. I'll see you on the next one. Until then.